This is Pardon the Pummel, the show that puts two creators head to head. And as always, we are joined by the wonderful creators we have here. Vrograg, the orc investigator himself. Say hello, Vrograg.
Hello, Vrograg, and hello, Nixxiom. I'm so happy to be here once again for another installment of Pardon the Pummel.
And we also, of course, have Nixxiom here. Nixxiom, say hello, introduce yourself once again.
Greetings, it is I, Nixxiom. Episode 2, man. Episode 2. I'm very excited. I think episode 1, I hope that the audience really enjoyed it. They certainly seem to, so I'm just ready to dive into some new topics, and I don't know. We'll see where it goes.
And hello, once again, I am Dan. I take a step back. I'm here to more organize. I'm kind of the adjudicator of the topics, but the two wonderful creators here that we have are going to be doing a majority of the talking. And in regards to the last episode, and I actually did want to bring this up before we got into our first topic for today, a majority of the comments in regards to what you two talked about last month really revolved around, hey, this is starting conversations, which was, it was a lot of fun to see people actually kind of like grabbing a hold of those topics that we hit on and starting their own discussions with them. And that filled me with a lot of positive energy from the direction that we are starting the show and taking it. That feels really good. So applause not just to the both of you for great conversations on the pilot episode to start, but for all of you in the audience who took it and ran with it and had your own conversations about these kinds of things. That's really magical. Now,
yeah, I mean, the audience being involved and making them a part of the podcast just as much as we are, like, that's awesome. So all the comments and stuff that we got to read, you guys are fantastic.
And certainly
it's very encouraging to see.
Those are available both on the YouTube comments on the Everlook YouTube page and over on the Everlook forums, as well as part of the Turtle forum. So those are the two places that you can find those places to have those conversations. And of course, obviously, wherever you want to have the conversations. With that being said, though, let's get right into the topics. We have a lot to talk about this week, or this month rather. And of course, we have to start out with Karazhan 40 in some capacity. It is the talk of the town, and Vrograg, I'll kind of throw it to you in this way, but it really has been what everyone has been talking about since it released.
Yeah, it's been more than just people in Turtle WoW. I was fortunate enough to have the day off when the raid launched, so I thought it would be fun to do a goofy world's first and watch people as they progress. And I spent 8 hours streaming, but the people that I saw that were in that stream, I would say a majority of them had never seen Turtle WoW, didn't know much about the private server scene, and were just looking at what people had done with this thing they maybe had loosely heard about, or the algorithm just kind of pushed forward to them. It was really interesting. And even though on that first stream, the boss, that first boss, was the only one to go down, everyone who I talked to who did the raiding they were so excited. They were like, oh my god, this isn't just pushover content. There's tight mechanics. It's interesting. It's difficult. They were loving it. The community was loving it. I think it's great.
You streamed for 8 hours and you only got the first boss down?
If it was
I'm listening.
If it was me, I probably would have at least gone 4 of 9 if it was just me.
And he would have tanked. He would have tanked at least 3 of them on his road.
But I'm an impartial observer, and I can't show them my true power. So because of that, I just let the community do what they do.
Okay, I see.
But
That's
also
cool,
bring
man.
back rogue tanking.
They're not going to do it. Jeez, I have the gear already.
This is obviously the first time Turtle has been involved in a race to world first kind of scenario, if you will. Nixxiom, you obviously have a lot of experience with many different kinds of active WoW right now, classic,
Yeah.
vanilla,
I'm everywhere.
you name it.
Yeah.
Were you able to catch any of the energy around this turtle race to world first-esque situation? And if you were you able to compare it at all to the energy around actual race to world firsts?
Yes. So, yeah, like you said, I'm kind of all over the place because of, being the YouTuber that I am. I'm kind of forced to play in all ballparks. So I haven't even gotten I haven't even gotten to do Karazhan 40 yet on Turtle WoW. But in regards to your question, like, have I been able to see like the hype around it, the race to world first? Most certainly so, especially like over on Twitter or X, whatever. And I think that the thing that stood out to me that was so like, here's the thing, like, I've been to some race to world first events for like actual retail WoW, right? Like, I was at the Red Bull Arena back in London when they did the race to world first in BFA for Jaina Proudmoore, whoever it was at the time. It's been a little while. And there's certainly a lot of energy there. There's a lot of hype around those events, but it feels so like, and this is where I'm going to kind of fail in describing it. Like, it feels very conveyor belt. Like the new raid comes out. Yeah, like the new raid comes out, everyone is like, yay, new raid. The same, like, 4 or 5 guilds are like the ones that are competing, Method and everything. The ones that are actually going to nail it. They're going to get the world first. And it's like, okay, Method got world first. Great. And then we just move on to the next raid. And there's not like Karazhan felt different for me based on what I saw, because not only was it a race to world first and people were hyped about that, people were also really hyped about the new lore that Turtle WoW was bringing out with Karazhan. They were surprised by things like that little twisting nether reveal that happens in the raid. It felt more like, and this is where words are going to fail me a bit. Like, it felt more like, you were watching like an adventure unfolding rather than some sort of like esports event, I guess.
I know exactly why that is. And there is one secret ingredient that Turtle WoW has, for good or for ill, has stuck to their guns about, that I think in this context gives it a huge strength, which is in retail WoW, there are PTRs. There's public test realms where you can look at everything. You can figure it all out. Add-on developers can just make everything you need to do that run. Everyone who was doing the world's first for Turtle WoW, the reason it felt like an adventure was because no one really knew what was going to be next, what the strategy was going to be. No one even knew what buffs the boss did, what mechanics were there. So, like, in a very honest and true way, it was like getting to watch true vanilla progression.
Right. And then also there's something to be said about 40-man rating is badass. Like, I'm just saying, and watching like 25 players, like, that's great and all, but there's something special about 40 players. So anyway, go ahead, Dan. You were going to say something.
I do agree. The ability to herd cats with 40 players versus 25 is an entirely different universe. It is,
especially when like the mechanics are not known and the debuffs and just everything. Like, even like where do we go? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, 40 people like on screen, like just as confused as the guy next to them. Like, it's just as confused as the viewer. Like, I don't know. It's a very different vibe that's a lot more intoxicating and a lot more fun, at least in my opinion.
Without spoiling anything, I have to say, because you're mentioning the 40-person thing.
Yeah.
There is a mechanic on one of the bosses. They will periodically put out a debuff that puts a shackle-like particle effect around you. It's colored differently.
Right.
When you have this debuff, if you move, you will explode and kill everyone around you. That's 40 people who, on the turn of a dime, need to stop moving completely in a fight where you need to be moving.
Everyone,
that alone is amazing.
Everyone say it with me now. I will not move when Flame Wreath is cast. There's a song for it.
Yeah. And again, like 40 people and people who have never done this fight having to figure that out. And I saw the wipes on that boss. It was literally like wait, what the hell killed us?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, then how do we avoid it? Oh, the tooltip says not to move. What?
What I was gonna say there, and this is kind of getting back to what Nixxiom was mentioning with what is the difference between that almost assembly line style of race to world first content that we tend to get when a new race to world first happens on retail versus what we saw with Turtle. And I'm going to use a buzzword here, and I am so sorry, everyone. Boy. Some of you hate this buzzword. It's so much more organic.
Wow.
I thought it was going to be synergy. I'm just happy.
Synergy. Ooh. No, we don't like. Well, no, I do like the word. That's not the point. The fact of the matter is that this is specifically with your stream. We saw day one, Vrograg. We saw so many different guilds from so many different communities from so many different parts of the globe getting in on this and trying to be competitive and all seeing different varied levels of success. It really was the entire community rating-wise coming together, getting their best and brightest, and competing with each other. And that is that, like, you could not create, like, we as organizers could not go and have created a better way to really put this content at the forefront.
Yeah, and I think it was great that I was like given that privilege to show that to people, but you know, it really is a window into a whole different experience because the game's been around for so long. We'll never know what it looked like for groups who walked into Nixxiom for the very first time and how long it actually took them.
Right.
Because there wasn't a public test round. I'm pretty sure there wasn't a public test round back then. So like everything needed to be figured out organically, and it really was an adventure. I didn't cover the entirety of the progression. I got the first and the last because I also work a full-time job, but it was really fun to watch and just an amazing experience for people in and out of the community.
Nixxiom, do you feel like I made a fair comparison there? Because I don't want to discredit any of the groups, organizations, or folks who participate in the Race to World First. My buddy Kexman has done broadcasting for them many times. I love him to death. Am I being fair though?
I feel like whenever I'm watching like Turtle WoW rating or the new dungeons that come out or just any of the new content, again, this is a segment of the podcast where words are going to fail me or I'm going to sound kind of crazy or strange, but I feel like Turtle WoW has like the vibe of like a giant LAN party. At least for me.
Oh, I like that. Yes.
It does. Like, whereas like the modern game kind of has just a vibe of just being like, you know, just it's consumerism. It's just, okay, here's the new patch, here's the bullshit dailies, you know, here's like all the new chores that you have to do and, you know, the new raid. And it's usually on a small island in some way. Like Undermined obviously just came out and it's an island. It's a little instant section of the world and you're just going to live there for, you know, however many months the patch exists. And then you get the new island with its new set of chores and whatnot. And Turtle WoW, and this is something we could talk about later or like, you know, we can expand on in other parts of the podcast. But Turtle WoW is always building onto like the original world. And I don't know, it's got like a big LAN party vibe to it rather than being so corporate, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I don't
know.
I feel what you're saying. And Dan, I feel like it's an apples to oranges comparison because they're two different things. When everyone knows what's at the end, then it just becomes an execution fest. And I definitely believe that people learning how to execute under pressure is its own thing. I definitely think Raiders on Turtle WoW had to execute under pressure, but there was way more of the like critical problem solving, organization, and sort of everybody needing to pool their thoughts together, because I even know there were some fights where you needed to use detect magic, right? This is a spell that you might use it in AQ40 as a mage, but outside of that, it doesn't even belong on your hotbar at all. Like, but
Honestly,
in this context, like all of a sudden it's like it becomes one of the most useful spells because it's like we don't know what the boss has.
yeah.
Throw detect magic up. So like, literally it is a different game.
Detect magic rating wise is previously used in BWL on the different Draconoid packs and Chromagus to figure out what they're vulnerable to. And that's kind of it.
You do that. You know what many other guilds do? Looks like a warlock pull. It's got to be shadow vulnerable.
You know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. So we were supposed to talk about lore, and Nixxiom kind of tried to get into it multiple times, and we ended up having a different conversation entirely during this segment.
That's organic.
It was very organic, actually.
Yeah, it's very, very
I
organic.
Hate you guys. I hate. No. Okay. You know what? We'll get to it next segment. We'll get to the next segment. How about that?
All right.
We'll talk lore in the next segment. But for now, though, we're going to go ahead, take a short time out, a quick musical break, and then we return to Pardon the Pummel, segment number 2, the Lore Edition, coming up right after this. Welcome back. This is Pardon the Pummel, segment 2, Lore Edition, because we may or may not have avoided it in the last one. Not avoided is the wrong word. We had so much other stuff we really wanted to talk about there, honestly, and I felt like with the fact that everyone is still very much talking about Kara 40, it was good to really focus on what Turtle has done with it and how much the community has been impacted for the positive with it. With that being said, though, and if you're taking a shot along with us every time I say that, go for it. My God. Let's go ahead and talk quick Kara 40 lore. Vrograg, you were making, before we started, some really kind of like baseline important lore points from Kara 40.
And I stick to the fact that I don't want to spoil the lore for everyone, but for those that just want a brief overview of what the community at large has learned through the discoveries of Karazhan 40, we explored more of the tower. Who's there, I'll still leave up to some people's imagination. But one important thing we did learn is they went to Outland. Many people, their experience with Outland is completely different. For the TBC enjoyers and after, it's a whole different world. It's a zone. In Turtle WoW right now, it's only part of an instance. You get sent there from something in the tower. Again, won't spoil. But we got to see Outland. And Turtle WoW's vision of Outlands, it would seem, right now, is literally a floating continent in the twisting nether with some Draenei and demon stuff going on. Like, that's more or less what's going on there.
Which would make a lot of sense. Draenor did get blown into many shreds of planetoid. So the fact that, a small shard of that gets involved with, and again, I'm not going to say anything, but everything else going on with Karazhan 40, I really like that implementation.
And I'm not super sharp on my Draenei lore because I personally don't want space goats in my game.
So do I.
There were...
Really? Man, I love the Draenei. All right, keep going.
No. Yeah. No. So what we saw were NPCs, people there that were labeled Draenei, but they did not look like the more traditional TBC Draenei. They looked much more like bulkier, broken, essentially.
Okay, so I'm going
There's
to
the
give
label
a
of
really
Draenei.
short, this is why the Draenei are Draenei spiel here. Warcraft 3 introduced a native species to Draenor called Draenei, who were very much live off the land kind of native individuals. Most of their structures were made out of large mushrooms. They generally used natural environment for hunting, poaching, killing, and they had the innate ability to use poisons and to blend in with the environment around them. And then WoW happened, and then TBC happened, and Chris Metzen forgot what he wrote in Warcraft 3. He forgot about it all and decided to make Draenei into something else. And then he had to blend them together somehow, which did not go well. But the original Draenei were what we see kind of in Swamps of Sorrow, but the stuff that we see in Karazhan 40 is the less devolved, less insane version of those, because when the Dark Portal was opened initially, some Draenei were swept through as well, and it kind of devolved them and drove them mad. So what we see there is a much less kind of ruined version and more Warcraft 3 Frozen Throne version of Draenei.
That's a pretty long-winded way to say.
I deeply apologize.
No, that's a long-winded way to say they shoehorned something in for the Alliance because no one likes them. But I mean, you could also say that too.
Also, no comment. I'm not saying a thing.
No, well, I mean, Nixxiom did say he likes Draenei, so do you like the current, or I guess the TBC iteration of Draenei? Or do you like what Turtle WoW's take on Draenei is? I'm curious to know what you think of, because I do think that those people have an interesting story. I don't really like what TBC did with it necessarily, though.
Yeah, Draenei are actually one of my favorite races in WoW, actually. I really love the Draenei. I'd love it if we had broken playable Draenei one day. I very much enjoyed being exposed to Draenei in Warcraft 3, like the more broken form of them. And then later on in like TBC, you get like kind of the more noble Eridar race that has not been devolved due to fel corruption and going through the Dark Portal, like what Dan was talking about a second ago.
Is Eridar their base race? Is that like the name for the people?
Yeah, so they're Eridar. So like Kil'jaeden and Archimonde are Eridar, Velen is an Eridar, and Draenei is just a word in their language that means the exiled ones. So they are the ones that did not join the Burning Legion and became corrupted by them. And then some Draenei that resided in Outland or Draenor for a while, due to like exposure to like fel magic and like corruption and stuff, especially when like the Horde was being built up with all their warlocks and all their mumbo jumbo, they became what are called the Broken. So these more like kind of feral, nasty-looking Draenei. Doesn't mean that they all went like completely crazy, because there were Draenei like Nabundo, for example. He was the first Draenei shaman. He was broken, and he lost his ability to communicate with the light due to exposure to fel, and so he looked to the elements instead and became the first Draenei shaman. So I actually really like Draenei because it's sort of like they're a little bit of a paradox, because on one hand,
no comment on this.
Yeah, like on one hand, you have the fact that they are in TBC, they were like the most like good race in the game because they're a bunch of like pure light worshippers and stuff. But yet they were also kind of hypocritical, because it's like, yeah, we believe in the light, dude. Yeah. Oh, you're a broken? You've been exposed to fel? Like you're one of us that's been exposed to dark magic? Well, screw you. Get away from us, you filthy like parasite to society. And so there were a bunch of hypocrites as well. And Blizzard kind of rolled with that a little bit, going into the more modern lore. But I like where Draenei began, both in Warcraft 3 and in TBC, but I don't like where they went, ultimately.
Yeah, and joking aside, like my real objection to Draenei, how they were portrayed in TBC, I think had more to do with an overarching issue I had with the lore, because I know I've mentioned this before in other places, but in vanilla, you're very grounded in the world of Azeroth. And
Yep.
when Outlands became a thing, and you had these Draenei who literally came from space, it moved from a more grounded fantasy to more of like a sci-fi fantasy.
Yeah. No, I
And
agree.
like that to me is kind of where I think I started losing the plot. But I like what Turtle Wow's done here in that we do have people going to Outland, but it is very clearly not a place you want to be. And the story of the continuing story of these Draenei that are there is very compelling and a lot more grounded, I feel.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That does make sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of where things are going when it comes to building content off of lore, what we just
speaking
saw.
of grounded.
What's that?
I said, yeah. Speaking of grounded,
you know what, we're doing our best here. The trailer for a new Dragon Maw dungeon was released recently. Nixxiom, starting out with you here, what were your thoughts after watching it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? What kind of stuck out with you?
Let's see. My immediate thoughts off the top of my head. Totally impromptu here. First thought, I love it whenever we see new dungeons being added to the game in Turtle WoW, or old dungeons are enhanced to make the replayability like all the more sweet. Like, oh, I wanna check out that new area in the Dead Mines on a new character. And then now we have this Dragon Maw dungeon that just came out, and it's like, oh man, like I want to play a new character and go through it, not as like some level 60 just burning through it, but the proper, experience with a group around like that level range. That would be cool. So first things first, love it whenever they add like new content to the level up experience. I also I have a particular fondness for the wetlands as a zone and like all the strange lore that surrounds that zone, especially like I'm one of those people that, I will say this, I think Blizzard forgot that they sort of were establishing in the lore back in Classic WoW that there's an old god underneath the wetlands. And I think Blizzard completely forgot that, because when you're questing in Vanilla WoW all through the wetlands, like you're just getting all these hints of like the land is corrupted in this strange way, and nobody exactly knows why. And so anyway, but that's a whole other topic. So I'm particularly a big fan of the wetlands and the mystery that surrounds that place. So a new dungeon in the wetlands, love it. Also love orcs, like old school Warcraft 2 orcs.
Yeah.
Very tribalistic, very like honor bound, very like, blood, gold, and glory. I love it. And then of course you've got the Dragon Maw, a bunch of, red dragon tamers and stuff. Like it's just like the scale of the dungeon. I mean, just like seeing it in the trailer and, getting to go in there and run around. I mean, it's a big freaking dungeon. And but if you haven't gotten to do it yet, and when you get to do it, it's fun. So yeah.
Yeah, and I watched it as an orc enjoyer myself. Of course, I'm excited about this stuff. I'm also excited about the Turtle team and their writing team, especially making it a priority to take these unfinished stories, whether they were meant to be left that way or whether they were genuinely meant to have another chapter. I think it's so great because here's one thing, right? I watched the video, and this guy announces himself as, Chieftain Zulu Head, and I'm going, that's such a bizarre name. And of course, I do what any journalist orc would do, and I'm like, that's got to be a reference, right? And sure enough, there is an entry on the on the WoW Wikipedia about Chieftain Zulu Head.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, where the lore of Turtle WoW would pick up, because he did stuff in the Burning Crusade, obviously we wouldn't pick up. Before then, though, really the last we heard is that he was looking for some powerful artifact in the Red Ridge Mountains, and that was it. Like, other stuff happened in TBC, and there was more stuff that was established. But I mean, that perfectly describe something. Also, I'm pretty sure he wasn't super tight with Doomhammer, so you already have a good reason for Horde to be attacking other orcs. And this is another great way for, if you've seen some of the Turtle WoW lore with like the Blackrock clan, there are splinter factions that are like, we're not happy with what the Blackrock clan's doing. We're leaving them. We want to join the Horde. So this is a great way to incorporate a more diverse story into the Horde storyline itself. And, RP opportunities open up there too.
And a lot of, with the Blackrock clan in particular, a lot of what we understand as the Blackrock clan is at least in part a group called the Blacktooth Grin clan, where after Blackhand was murdered by Doomhammer, his two sons, Rend and Maim, said, you know what, we're taking our Blackrock orcs and we're going to find our own pond. We're going to have our own party over here. And they made the Blacktooth Grin clan, where your initiation was getting one of your teeth knocked out to show your devotion to the group. In regards to the wetlands, though, I did want to mention a lot of something that people forget about Warcraft 2 was how massive the battle for Grim Batol was for the Alliance taking back over the Dwarven lands as a whole. They would not have been able to get a beachhead if they weren't successful at the Battle of Grim Batol. And that's actually one of my favorite maps in all of Warcraft 2. It's such a good map. The beginning of the second act. I'm so excited for what we have coming up for the Dragonmaw dungeon. But now I'm going to ask the both of you this. And again, I'm going to start with Nixxiom here. Sure. If you could pick something from the RTS games, the RTS lore, the RTS worlds, and bring it forward into Turtle, what would it be?
Easy. All right. In Warcraft 3, maybe I talked about this in the last episode. I don't think so, though. But I've talked about this with someone recently. In Warcraft 3, there is a whole section in the Stone Talon Mountains where at one point Thrall and friends go under the mountains and they're going through these deep caravans or these deep caverns, not caravans, caverns that are located like under the Stone Talon Mountains that are filled with all these enemies and stuff. And I believe they were going to go see the Oracle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in
but
the
it's been a
little dens. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, where is this in the game? Like, I've always wanted to see, like, all of that stuff added into Classic WoW, like, as a low-level dungeon for Horde players, like, going down into those Barrow Downs, you said, or whatever, the Oracle Caverns or something. In Warcraft 3, like, they were absolutely massive. And so having, like, just a monumentally huge dungeon for low-level players to go into would be cool. And it would be even cooler, in my opinion, if this low-level dungeon was a 10-player dungeon for maybe like 18 to 25, Horde players or Alliance players that run out there from Ashenvale. So that is one thing I would really like to see. That's just as a start.
Just quickly about that, Nixxiom.
Yep.
Let me ask you: have you looked?
Have I looked where?
There are tunnel systems connecting Ashenvale and Stone Talon.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if that's the same.
No, that's
thing.
not. That's not it.
No,
okay.
not it.
Yeah, because my remembrance of Warcraft 3 and even N2 is pretty light. So I'm thinking like, well, there is that tunnel. Maybe
I think it's called like the Talon Deep Tunnel or something. But yeah, it connects like southern Ashenvale to Stone Talon Mountains. But in Warcraft 3, there is like this whole part of the Orc campaign where they're going to go talk to like the Stone Talon Oracle or whatever. It's been a long time for me as well. And they have to like pass through these caverns that go underneath and within the Stone Talon Mountains. And that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Okay. What that was, the Cairn and Thrall had to go through and solve these puzzles of these ancient Night Elf barrow dens Kind of like what we see in Moonglade and Ashenvale, where the druids are slumbering, except this one's abandoned. And there's all these sorts of mysteries and traps and really just this wonderful mission. I remember that very well. It's so good. Unfortunately, Blizzard got really lazy about it, and those are in game. It's just the barrow dens at the top of the peak.
At the summit.
Yeah,
that one barrow
it's
den.
Generic. It's just a generic model. It's so boring.
Yeah. And it's like, that's cool and all, but like, you have the potential for making like a huge dungeon here, or just a new dungeon, especially like, for like the Turtle WoW team, if they decide one day, hey, like, let's have a dungeon that maybe you go to after Wailing Caverns or something, or within that same level range or whatever, because like, that'd be cool.
And like you were saying, if it's a 10-player dungeon where you actually do have to, much like Cairn and Thrall did, have to split up and solve problems on your own branches of the dungeon, and then you have to meet back up at the end for a big conclusion. That'd be so cool. I love that you brought that up. That's so cool.
It would be so cool. Like, you got your two groups, you got your 2 tanks, 2 healers, whatever, your 6 DPS, and there's like a split, and you both have to, like, the first instinct is just, stick together, and you all go left, and you're fighting the boss over there. But then you defeat him, and then like everybody dies or whatever, because you have to like fight these 2 bosses in 2 completely different areas of the dungeon at the same time, and get them down around like, within like a certain like time limit or whatever. Like, I don't know, but yeah, split up would be really cool. Then like a rendezvous, like right after, like you solve some puzzles or fight some bosses or whatever. Like, that would be awesome.
That's really good. Okay, Vrograg, if you could bring something from the RTS games forward into Turtle, what would it be?
So what I have for this is something that I, at the outset, know can't be fully implemented in the way that I want. But I have talked to a lot of people, especially role players, about the peculiarities of the difference in the factions, how people got allied with other people. And one of the things I appreciate the most is the 4 separate factions. The fact that granted, Forsaken's kind of a different ball of wax, but the Night Elves were separate, and the Horde didn't have the Forsaken. Obviously, I think from a game design point of view, it would be a monumental undertaking, but because of their reliance on Warcraft 3 as really their Rosetta Stone for everything else they do, I wish there was more in that faction separation. I wish there was more that might even at times pit the Night Elves against other members of the Alliance, or where the Forsaken could actually be more pitted against members of the Horde. There's whispers of it here and there. I know there's Forsaken quests where they do some pretty out-of-pocket things that do not make the Horde happy. I think less so. I could be incorrect, but with the Night Elves. But I would really like there to be like more sensical faction lines, because most RP Forsaken that I've spoken to, they're like, yeah, I don't know why we're in the Horde either. Like, it's convenient militarily, but it's a hard shoe to fit on that foot. And same can be said for Night Elves, who were originally portrayed as xenophobic and very reclusive, almost feral at times, and they finding common purpose with the Alliance is like, do you know they do industry too? Like, how would they get teamed up? But
a Night Elf sees a human lumber mill and is like, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong.
Yeah, I mean, and rightfully so, from their lore point of view, what they do to the orcs in the Ashenvale logging camp makes sense. But you can't tell me that no one from the Alliance is doing something similar. Maybe it's not in their sacred groves. I get that distinction, but it's definitely different.
Oh, certainly Night Elves looking at dwarves just thinking, you do what? And you take what from the earth?
Yeah.
Oh no.
So my whole thing is that I understand, we can't have 4 or even more factions running around. There's way too many gameplay implications for that. but I wish there were more opportunities for the races themselves and their own political ideals to be better represented and be willing to do things that might be against the Alliance or the Horde in a more, and like really help make them more separate, because conflict makes for really good stories, and they're telling a lot of stories here. And I'm like, here's some really untapped potential. Do more stuff to pit the Forsaken against everyone. They
Right.
Sometimes they do that already. We got to see some of that, for instance, classically in the opening of the Wrath Gate in Wrath of the Lich King, right? And that was a great story moment for the Forsaken. And things like that, I think, can easily be done in Turtle WoW.
I think it would just be cool just to have just racial, like, restricted quests in the game. Especially around level 30, level 60, whatever, you go back to Darnassus as a night elf, and you end up talking to Tyrande, and she's like, yeah, these damn humans with their lumber camps, like, screw these guys. Like, I want you to go to, like, wherever, like, Eastvale Logging Camp, and I want you to, like, sabotage it a little bit, or, just like these, but if you're, like, a human player and you go up to her, like, you can't get this quest. So, yeah, bring a little bit of, like, that different, like, racial depth to the world. I agree with that. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would be hard to implement either. I mean, obviously, if you're doing, like, multiple factions, but racial quests would be, I would think, very simple to put in the game.
And I've been very publicly out there as campaigning for every class and race to have a class racial. Obviously, the balancing issue does exist, so you'd need a very light touch. But it's one spot where I'm like, so only priests and shamans are distinct enough to have their own racial abilities? Are you telling me that the way an orc trains to be a warrior is identical to how a human trains to be a warrior? Like, I don't buy that. I think it's a great way to showcase some of that racial identity, which would also help immersion and really help make that choice that players make at the very beginning of their character's creation be more meaningful.
I'm gonna throw something. I'm gonna throw something a little more complex at you, because I love this idea, and I've toyed with this idea for the longest time. Because, again, in my opinion, Night Elves being on the Alliance has made zero sense the entire time. Makes no sense. Does not make any sense. Night Elves at the most would be mildly friendly to Tauren, and that's kind of it. So instead of creating many factions, instead have variable racial kind of friendliness levels. So if you're a night elf, you're probably hated by orcs, but you're friendly, let's say, to Tauren. Or if you're an orc, you're probably hated when it comes to humans and night elves, but trolls and Tauren, you're on friendly levels. Undead, you're probably unfriendly to everyone. No one really likes you. And gnomes, probably hated towards everyone. That's just my opinion. I know no one's going to argue with that one.
Right. I mean, goblins, honestly, goblins can make a good play with Forsaken. I think they could see a good profitability thing. They were like,
I thought you were going to say gnomes.
Like workers who don't tire. Oh, we can work with this.
That's true. That's a good point.
But yeah, I think there is a very interesting dynamic between even allied races and unallied races to, like, better establish what their relationship is even, Obviously we know Night Elves and Tauren have a common respect for nature, but I could also see goblins getting along with dwarfs for a respect for wealth, which I think is underplayed a little bit more in WoW in general. But the archetype of dwarf from the old tabletop role-playing games, classically in Dungeons and Dragons, which a lot of WoW is loosely based off of, dwarves had an ability to literally just be able to sniff out how valuable something was. That's why they have treasure finding. So you're telling me the greediest race in the game, goblins, don't have treasure finding?
Right.
Okay, like, how does that make sense? So I could see those two getting along for a certain reason. So yeah, there's tons of stuff that can be done, I think, for cross-racial relationships, etc.
It would also then provide an impetus for people to, okay, I want to be friendlier with, like dwarves and humans. Okay, so I need to do quests for these different groups, and I need to set myself as hostile and kill off these other groups. And I need to make my actions representative of the faction I want to work with. So you would have, okay, a night elf that has realized maybe I need to work with more magically inclined individuals. So, all right, I need to work with humans. I got to be friendly to humans.
So they used to have, this is old Turtle WoW history, but when I first joined the server back in 2021, when there was only one server, you couldn't at default group with people on the other faction. Either faction had a quest where you used to have to get what were called your diplomatic papers. And it was a series of, I believe, like a breadcrumb quest and some basic like fetch things. And it was the lore to establish why you, as a member of the Horde or Alliance, specifically would be given dispensation to work with people from the other faction. And they got rid of it. I do not remember why. I don't remember if it was buggy or too many new people were joining and being like, "Oh, you said there was cross-faction gameplay. Where is it?"
Right.
And GMs pulling their hair out over that. But that's a really simple step that I think even the literacy of the common Turtle WoW player could wrap their head around, and I think would be a good step towards immersion.
Nixxiom, final thoughts on this before we get to our final segment. Factions, and really building the story and lore around the content of what we've been talking about.
I think it's a very solid idea. I mean, when we were talking about like the Night Elves and stuff earlier and their relationship to the Tauren, you brought that up. Yeah, I mean, like Night Elves all throughout the lore and the books and over all these years have been established as being on friendly terms with the Tauren because of very similar like religious beliefs and druidism and everything. And so, yeah, I mean, it would be interesting if like you make a Night Elf character, you're friendly-ish with all like your, I guess some of your Alliance buddies, but it would be interesting if you were neutral with like the Tauren. And a Night Elf player could go to Thunder Bluff, and the Tauren players there would be they would be neutral to you, and an Orc player could attack you, but then like the Thunder Bluff guards would attack you immediately or attack him for doing that. And then you have I don't know, I think it's a very solid idea. I'm imagining too, like I feel like Night Elves and Forsaken are kind of like mirrors of each other because yeah, the Night Elves are very xenophobic, and like if you're not down with the trees, then you ain't down with the Night Elves. And at the same time, you also have the Forsaken, who they're very, very xenophobic because they feel like they've been cast out by the entire world, which they have.
Yep.
And so anyway, but one thing that I would say, just another thought, very small addition that could be added to the game, and it's something I've wanted ever since I played Warcraft 3, specifically for the Forsaken. The Forsaken do not just consist of undead humans. They're also undead elves as well. So I'd really like to see some of those elves that were killed up in Quel'Tha Lost by Arthas in Warcraft 3 in the Forsaken faction. So you can either be a human Forsaken or an elf Forsaken. That's just a small thing that I've always wanted in WoW.
Really quick on that, Dan. I know you're trying to wrap up the segment, but literally yesterday I was talking about the same exact thing. There is a Dark Ranger skin available to Turtle WoW players through the donation shop. But get this, it's only available for High Elves. Like, I understand why that is. It's because that the skin is made for that model. But like, why can't you just be a Dark Ranger in Plan the Forsaken?
And also, there was just a lot of elves that Arthas and his Scourge slaughtered. a lot
Yeah.
of elves
Absolute
that were
unalive
then
them.
raised as undead. There was
Yeah.
so many.
Yeah.
So, Nixxiom, you both bring up very good points on this, but you're right. I'm trying to wrap up the segment. I did not want to disrupt how good this conversation was, but we went a little long. That's okay. When we come back, our final segment of Pardon the Pummel, we're going to be talking about replayability and classic and turtle content. What turtle's done well, what turtle maybe should be doing better. We're going to get to that right after this. Welcome back to this slightly long edition of Pardon the Pummel. We're going a little late on this one, but that's okay. The conversations have been fantastic. For our final segment here, we're going to be talking about what makes classic and turtle content replayable. What you can keep sinking your teeth into over and over again, and it feels just that bit more visceral and fresh. Nixxiom, I believe you were the one that actually brought up this topic when we were trying to kind of like organize our thoughts beforehand. So I'll just ask you right out the gate here: what made you think about this? What does this mean to you? Why is this kind of important to you?
I think it's important to me because over the past few years, with Blizzard's release of hardcore WoW and with like the hardcore movement that existed before the official servers, I think that people have begun to realize just how good classic WoW is in terms of its first impression when you first start playing the game, and also its replayability factor compared to other MMORPGs. Like, you have people playing hardcore, playing the same starting zones over and over and over again, and not getting bored of it. Like doing this, a dozen times, 24 times, and just loving it. And so, like, when we were talking about topics of things to discuss, I thought that talking about replayability in WoW would be cool because, for some reason, I've got a few theories. We could be here all day talking about it, but classic WoW just has an ability to hook players. It has like a gift that no other MMO has, and no other MMO has succeeded in recapturing. And so that's why I wanted to talk about it today. I thought that'd be just a good topic.
A great start here, Vrograg. Having heard kind of the basis for why we're talking about it, then what are your thoughts, and what makes Turtle replayable for you in particular?
So I'm really glad we have this topic because it's actually it hits me in a more personal spot for at least this week. I know Dan, I shared with you a little bit before how, like, hey, I was feeling a lot of burnout doing some news. I was going to pare back on some of the stuff I was doing for like the radio content because, I was getting burnout. And I always tell people, don't get burned out, take it easy if you're feeling that. With anything in life, I think that's a good approach. And I was determined to, actually play the game that I am constantly talking about for once.
Yeah.
So what I've been doing, and I've been streaming this, is that I'm like, hey, you know what? What if I make a character and I just impose a challenge on myself where I'm going to try to model the character off of Rexxar. I'm only going to use melee abilities. I'm going to be a hunter. I'm going to have a bear pet, name her Misha, and I'm going to see how much fun I can have with that. This is something that is really uniquely a vanilla WoW thing. You have a lot more player agency to not only build the character you want, but also how to operate in the world. Most people who are going to be playing hunters are probably going to use ranged abilities. Rexana, who I've been playing, does not do that. Straight up, not a single hunter ability. She's melee all the time. And nothing's forcing me to do that. And it's a little bit like the pioneers, I'll say, of the hardcore challenge where people are like, I wonder if I can get all the way to 60 without dying. And for the first people who started doing this sort of thing, it's just a self-imposed challenge. And these are the things that I think are always integral to replayability with honestly any game. Like you can see it in other ones, like I know Pokemon has things like Nuzlocke, self-imposed challenges. So I think what's always important to replayability is, for one, have your game be fun. Obviously, otherwise people want to replay it, but also have there be a level of player agency that allows them to play it from a different angle should they want to.
Is this something you feel that is unique to the turtle community? Because you brought up the different self-imposed challenges that we've seen, and certainly Turtle has built out on those.
Hardcore wasn't like made on Turtle WoW.
No.
But the Turtle team took the concept and put more in the game well before anything from Blizzard official servers ever did to make that a reality. So this is where the great interplay between the community and the team is in full effect, where because they're connected to the community and they see people doing things, rather than try to funnel someone's gameplay into a certain direction, they try to enhance it and make it part of the game. I mean, they recently had the Lunatic Challenge come out, which that's truly crazy. And there's Slow and Steady, there's the Vagrant Challenge, the one where you can only use items that you've made yourself. These are things that start as fun challenges that you just think of to yourself, maybe. And the team's like, well, what if we allow players to have sort of like some rails on that so they can actually try it for themselves? So part of it is allowing them to have the agency, but also encouraging it. I think it's very important that both things be true.
I'll go ahead and take things. I'll go and take it in a different direction here and ask how much of the replayability, because when you think replayability for an MMO, you have to think about leveling. How much of the replayability that Turtle has put into their game, how much of that has to do with the different expansions of content that not just leveling zones have, but now that we see with some of the new dungeons, the actual leveling dungeons that Turtle has said, no, we really want to see this.
I mean, I think it's a huge part. I don't think people who are new to WoW, and there are people that are brand new to WoW that start on Turtle WoW. I think it's the people that have already played the game before and they're like, oh, there's a new dungeon, but it's only like level 30 to 35. Well, I could go Raffle Stomp it with my 60, but everyone knows that dungeons at level feel way better. They're much more fun and engaging. And really the only way to do that is to, go make one of your own characters and try it out. So the new content, I think, acts as sort of the bait to encourage people to think about that. But what makes it happen, I think, is just the overall vanilla framework affords players that liberty to actually be able to do it again and not have it be a completely painful experience.
Turning to you on that same subject, Nixxiom, have you had a moment where, let's say we're referencing the wetlands, seeing the upper wetlands, this whole new stretch of land and quests that are just in Turtle? What were your thoughts when you saw one of those new zones for the first time?
Well, I'm going to take a small step back and just kind of start at level 1 in regards to replayability, and then talk about like the new zones and stuff. One of the things that I've always really appreciated about classic WoW, from the moment I first started playing it back in 2005 to today is that one of the things that makes the game so replayable, at least for me, is I feel like Blizzard really nailed it with having all these diverse races in the game, with all these unique starting zones, with all this unique lore that is separate to them, with their various conflicts and issues going on. And in doing so, every single playthrough just feels like a new adventure. Starting as a Night Elf is very different than starting as a Forsaken. And I could expand on that, more and more. But to go back to your question, for me, I'm an altaholic in WoW. Like, I had my years of playing the game where I was really big into end game content and raiding and arenas and all that stuff. But the thing that I fell most in love with is the world and the people playing in it. All the lore and the stories and the secrets to be uncovered. I loved it. And so when I see the world being shown love, and when I see content being added to the world that makes it more engaging, it's what really I'm looking for as an MMO player, because I feel like the world is the main character of the MMO. So it could be a new dungeon being added to the game, like this Dragon Maw dungeon that we've been talking about. That's awesome, because I'm going to make a new character and I'm going to be leveling, and with my last character I didn't get to experience fighting the Dragon Maw clan, but with this guy, with my orc character, hey, I'm a part of the Horde, I'm a part of this tribe, and these filthy Dragon Maw loincloth wearing peasants are stepping on my toes, and I'm going to go kill them and take their treasure, and I get to have that experience. So it could be, adding new dungeons in, but it could also be adding things like one thing I'm a big advocate for in regards to leveling and making it more replayable is creating more paths of progression other than just your number in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And one of my favorite things about classic WoW, it's always been one of my favorite things, is professions. And I feel like, especially in the modern game, the ball has been horrendously dropped when it comes to professions at low levels. But if you're an alchemist and you're leveling up in classic WoW, those healing potions are a godsend. And if you're a blacksmith and you're making gear to upgrade, the gear that you're wearing, the gear that you make is actually really good. And so, yeah, you'll be going out and doing those quests to go out to the Agaman family mills and Tirisfal Glades. But while you're out there, you're also looking for copper. You're also looking for linen cloth, and you're creating all these new paths of progression. So I'd also love to see, in the future from Turtle WoW, if they were to expand even further on professions and what you can make. I'd love to see some low-level item sets. I think that would be cool. And I've been talking for a bit, so I'll wrap up. But I would just say that what I felt when I saw the Dragon Maw trailer was that this is exactly what I'm looking for from World of Warcraft. We don't need another island to go and hide on. We don't need another Timeless Isle or Undermine or whatever. What we need is more expansion to the world that we're spending most of our time in. Because after all, for some people, it takes them months to hit level 60 in Classic WoW. And so giving them even more content to enjoy on that adventure, more stories to tell, more opportunities to group up with their friends, more opportunities to create some cool looking sword with their own two pixelated hands, working at the blacksmith forge, making those memories and adding to that personal character story. That's what I'm looking for, not just rush to endgame and AFK in the capital city until the Molten Core raid is ready to go. Not to say that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't know. I just love the world and when stuff is added to it.
You said something very, very, very specific, and I want to repeat it. The world feels more fleshed out. The world feels more complete. Because when you if you go in with a model viewer and you just look at the world models for vanilla, there's massive gaps in the world. There's just stretches of land and territory that should have something there that don't. And one thing I think Turtle has done that's really exactly what you're saying is they've gone through and they're filling out. They're building out the world itself, where it's not like, okay, you have to go to the uplands in the wetlands. You don't have to go there, but they're there. And they have very legitimate looking settlements, dwarven and human, that feel like they should be there. And it's not just this blank slate. The world just feels more completed.
There's so much that's not finished with the game. Like, we all know this. Like, vanilla, at the end, there was a lot of things that they couldn't do. They didn't have enough time, and it's not easy work, but it's clearly the game itself, at least from a vanilla point of view, it's calling out for it,
One thing that I hope that maybe Turtle does down the road, it's totally a want. It is not a need in any way, shape, or form. But in regards to fleshing out the world and making it more complete, there's a lot of buildings in Classic WoW and a lot of places that are very empty. Like, you'll walk into like a ruined building in like I don't know, like the Plaguelands, and it's just completely empty. Like, there's no overturned tables or chairs or anything. And I've always had that little gripe in the back of my mind, all these years of, I wish like someone would go in and take the time to go into like these empty areas of the world where there's just nothing and add a little bit more character, broken tables or just like whatever, like in like abandoned houses and stuff. But that's a small thing, but that's a tiny thing. I wish that maybe Turtle could jump on one day.
Just to call back to a previous question from a previous segment.
Okay.
I asked the two of you, okay, if you could pull one thing from RTS lore, what would it be to like pull it into Turtle or Classic? You saying that made me actually realize there's a lot of things I would pull, but one of the big things I would pull would be the Temple of the Damned from Warcraft 2. Do either of you remember that?
I do not.
No, and I'm older than you.
Fair enough. I wasn't going to say that. The Temple of the Damned is where Gul'dan brought the Necrolites, or the last living Necrolites, together, sacrificed all of them, and then shoved their souls into the dead corpses of Stormwind Knights, members of the Brotherhood of the Horde.
Oh, yeah. I remember now.
To make the first Death Knights. It's never been represented in any version of WoW ever. And I think that is such a swing and a miss. Because to see where it happened, to see the death and corruption that started this first group of Death Knights, to show where this kind of thread of death really took hold after the Necrolites started bringing it into the world. That would just be so cool to see. And I just wanted to add that.
Be geographically near there?
What's that?
Won't we geographically be near there?
So if I remember correctly, that was somewhere that it was kind of close to Blackrock Spire, I think. Like somewhere between Blackrock Spire and Karazhan. It was definitely north. Like north in the northern part of the nation of Azeroth.
You don't remember the name of the region, though, do you?
What's that?
You don't remember the name of the region, though, do you?
It could have been Red Ridge. It could have been that Burning Steppes area.
I mean,
Red Ridge Mountains needs a Temple of the Damned, to be fair.
Yeah.
It's too tranquil.
Like, literally, if you go to Red Ridge right now, it's for future content. There is just a fort, an empty fort, not vanilla. It's just there. The Turtle team does this kind of stuff all the time. You don't know if they're faking you out or if they have something for real. But given, I believe, this is conjecture, by the way. I don't actually have insider information. Actually, I do have insider information, but my lack of WoW lore is preventing me from knowing if anything's related to what you just said, Dan. But I feel like some of these storylines of the remnants of the previous wars, I think that is something that the team's playing with. And I don't know if it's going to be the Temple of the Damned, but
I
let me ask
know
you
what fort you're talking about. That isn't it. I know what you're talking about though.
Okay, because you know how the team will gaslight even us.
I know how alcoholics will gaslight even us. Don't you even?
Well, who do you think he learned it from?
Okay, big question and kind of the final big topic for us to chew on here for this episode of Pardon the Pummel. What do you feel like Turtle could do better when it comes to replayability? How do you think they could enhance the replayability for the current player base? And Vrograg, I'll go ahead and ask you to start.
So there's a very practical answer. The practical answer is, I mean, if you're specifically talking about replayability, I guess this wouldn't specifically answer it, but for newer players, I think just in general, making the game super easy and seamless to install, I think that's something that helps. And it does matter for people who come back to replay. You might play for a little bit, go away, come back again, and then you're like, oh, there's this update, that kind of stuff. So I think that is something that does play into it. But I think in general, my sort of rule of thumb is continue what they're doing. Keep fleshing out things. There are so many simple and rudimentary systems in the game that if you add stuff to it at every level, the game will benefit. A really good example, and I know this, you might even expect me to say this, but fishing. Fishing could have so much more. There could just be more fish. There could be more recipes. There could be more zones, more dynamically spawning instances of fish. There could be more fish bosses, stuff like that. This is an existing system in the game that you can add so much content. Same thing could be said for survival, but I think there's plenty of other examples of here's a simple system that could be fleshed out more. I think doing that will continue to make the game feel more rich, and the richer it gets, I think the more attractive it is. And Nixxiom was talking about this before, specifically with, well, I'm going to do this leveling thing, but this time I'm going to be a miner, right? Those systems, when you make them rich, it makes those deviating paths more enticing and more fun to try.
Okay. Nixxiom, your thoughts?
I think I shared a lot of my thoughts earlier in my previous rant where I was talking about, expanding on professions, kind of like, what was just talked about. Like, I love the idea of more fish. I love the idea of being able to unlock a boat mount where you can just like sit on a boat, like, out on water and just
can't move.
Oh, dude. Oh, you can't. Well, that's fine. But perfect. There you go.
We're halfway there.
I never do fishing. So just because I am I don't have the patience for it. I'm not WoW Krendor. I can't spend all day like fishing. I can't spend 5 minutes. I'm too, I don't know. But just things like that, like a little boat mount, more fish, low level set items that you can create, even if it's just like, like a 2-piece thing, it's shoes and gloves. And if you're wearing both, you get +1 stamina or something, little things like that. But ultimately, I think you put it perfect by just saying keep doing what works. Obviously, what Turtle WoW is doing works with the whole, hey, let's not rush our players into Outland, or let's not rush them into some like end game zone where everyone's just going to be hopping around all day. Let's focus on expanding the world, making more low-level dungeons, adding more quests to the game, giving players like new opportunities to customize their character and their adventure like the way that they want. I mean, like I already talked about it, but it blows my mind whenever I think about it, how like you have all these MMO companies that they'll make their game and they'll just make the world and the level up process and all of that stuff just a chore to go through. And like all the emphasis and all the focus is at the end game. And yet, like, one of the reasons why people play MMOs is for that world. It's it's why you play our role-playing games. So Oblivion Remastered just came out yesterday, and everyone's losing their minds because, like, people want to leave this world behind for 30 minutes or a few hours and get immersed into a new world, either by themselves, playing Oblivion or Skyrim, whatever, or with their friends, like playing WoW. And so when you flesh out that world, when you add more to it, when you create new opportunities for adventure and create more ways for people to customize their character to be who they really want them to be, I mean, I don't understand why this isn't like one of the main focuses of like modern MMO development. Like why is so much emphasis on just end game. When you got to go through, like, at least in classic WoW's case, like you're going to have to go through hours upon hours upon hours of gameplay just to reach that point. So anyway,
I think there's
keep
a real
doing what works.
reason why, and and I know it's a little bit cynical of me to say this, but I believe that isn't instant return on money, right? Developing this stuff thoughtfully takes time. When Vanilla WoW was created, even though it was rushed at the end, they took their time making it. The Turtle WoW team, for good or for ill, right? They, as of recently, their track record's been pretty good. Recently, they make something with a lot of discussion with the community, within their own team. They take time to test it. They take time to make sure it makes sense. And these are the things that, in a way, Turtle WoW has a privilege of not having some gigantic corporate overlord breathing down their neck saying, this has got to be done at this time. Because what you end up getting is these spiritless facsimiles of an MMO.
I think as well, like when an MMO comes along and its only focus is on the end game, or it's like 98% of the developer's focus, it's just like an admittance that they're like, our game is not going to grow anymore. Like our game is dead in terms of population growth. We are just here to maintain the people that are already here and just give them something to do until they trickle out and the game dies. But when you put a lot of your emphasis on those first impressions of the game, those first few hours when you're, getting immersed into this new world and seeing what it's all about, whether you're a new player or a returning player, like that is where new players become hooked on your game and keep, paying money, paying their $15 a month or doing whatever. So it's one of the reasons why I think Turtle WoW is just so damn successful, is just they have put so much emphasis on that first impressions experience and just fleshing out the world. And anyway, so
I mean, you got to do that, and you also have to have support for the community. That's the only way you can make these things last. And Turtle WoW, through work and the good people, has a really great community that, sometimes those first experiences, they're not even game related. They're like, you ran into someone who's like, hey, I'm giving away a bag. Would you like a bag?
Yeah.
That alone can change someone's perspective on the game itself. That like, okay, I kind of know what Vanilla WoW is, but like the people here are really nice. That can be the big difference.
Right.
That's a lot of good points. Specifically what you were talking about, Nixxiom, where the entire world, the entire leveling process really, when it's fleshed out and it feels thought out, and there's stuff to do every step of the way, it holds on, it retains players and replayability so much more. An MMO from back in the day that I'll reference that I felt did that really well was Warhammer Age of Reckoning, where every level, every new town and zone you went to, there was PvP to do. There were different quests and areas to explore. There were random achievements where you could get from just clicking on random things that you find out in the world, and you get this fun chunk of lore that they've just built out. And it was really great for those that did remember it. It got EA'd very hard. Like EA cut the development time by over a year and said, no, release it now.
Yeah, like I was saying, these corporate guys breathing down your neck, making you feel like this labor of love you're doing isn't what they want, and it just becomes very soulless.
I've actually been playing Warhammer Online recently.
I still have the Return of Reckoning client.
Yeah.
I have a max level Shadow Warrior that I infuriate people on.
Nice.
But that is neither here nor there. You also mentioned the Oblivion remaster that just came out, and I will quote my Blue Sky post that I put up yesterday. Okay, now do Morrowind, you cowards.
I would love to see a Morrowind remaster. That'd be awesome.
That one actually, like, Oblivion remaster probably didn't really need to happen per se. A Morrowind remaster, yes, it needs to happen, and it'd be so good.
Am I going? Make a new game. What's going on? Like, am I the only one drinking like crazy juice? Because they've been teasing a new Elder Scrolls for, are we on 5 years now?
They only teased it once. Yeah, probably more than that, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, like, why would... Don't give them money. That's the worst thing you can do. That's encouraging this bad behavior.
I think none of us expect...
This stuff drives me up a wall with, like, this... How many times have they re-released Skyrim?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I definitely think there is a good time and place to remaster things, right? But I have a tough time seeing that being done and believing it isn't just a cash grab.
Oh, no, it absolutely is. Right. You're right.
Stop supporting big gaming corporations, everyone.
You know what? That is a wonderful point to end on right there. We're going to call it good right there.
Support your local developers.
Vrograg, where can people find you, buddy?
You can find me on YouTube at just look for Vrograg Fishslayer. I've lately been streaming my Path of Rexar runs, so make sure to catch those. It's been a good time.
I was going to say, by the way, in Heroes of the Storm, speaking of games that came out, I can't say anything else positive about it. I loved Heroes of the Storm, don't get me wrong. Did you know Rexar actually throws axes in that?
Oh, clearly you haven't watched the stream yet, because that's the only thing I allow Rexana to do as a ranged ability. She uses her throwing axes.
Love it. Love it. Nixxiom, tell people where they can find you.
Mostly on YouTube. If you just look up Nixxiom, Nixxiom, you'll find me. Not really too active on social media outside of X, but I'll post on there every now and then. So if you want to watch me like trolling around, by all means. But mostly YouTube. Nixxiom on YouTube.
There we go. We definitely went long on this episode, but the conversations were absolutely stellar. So please, everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us for episode 2. Please pardon the pummel.